Welcome to the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education budget hearing for June 11th, 2019. Julie, could you please take the roll?
Sure. Mark Berry.
Present.
Leanne Charlo, absent. Julie Gottschall, present. Andy Duran.
Present.
Richard Haig.
Present.
Ann Hill. Present. John Morozen.
Present.
Good, we have a quorum so we can begin. And so tonight we have a budget hearing. The purpose of this meeting is to allow the public to comment on the proposed 2018-2019 amended school budget. People desiring to speak should be recognized by the president, state their name and address, then make their comment. Written comments may also be handed to me. Would anybody like to address the board? Not seeing anybody, we will go directly to our Director of Finance, Mr. Jay Kahn, who will take us through the amended budget presentation.
Okay, we passed the original budget back in September, and the rules require us, because we had some significant changes, if we're going to spend over our budget, we are required to amend it, or if we need to transfer money from one line to another line greater than 10% of the budget, we're required to amend it. So when we amend the budget, we follow all the same rules and regulations and processes that we did to pass the original budget. So we posted the tentative budget for 30 days for public viewing, and we publicly notified the community about this hearing, and we'll go through the hearing, and then you'll get to approve it later on in the meeting. I'm just going to kind of quickly go through, I'll show you the original budget, the new budget, and then go through the changes. This was our original budget. We had budgeted a $300,000 operating surplus, and then we transferred money from fund balance to the capital projects fund to pay for the new air conditioning units at the elementary school in the amount of about $1.1 million. So we had a net total deficit, or a reduction in fund balance at the end of the year, projected at $850,000. The new amended budget has more or less a balanced operating budget, but pretty much that entire amount for the air conditioning is coming out of fund balance, and there's no surplus left to mitigate that expense. So we're looking at about $1.3 million in decrease in fund balance. I'll go through some of the revenue changes. We had a greater than expected collection rate for our taxes, so I've increased the budget basically because I know what our revenue has been, so I increased our budget up to the revenue. $30,000. We had higher earnings on investments due to rising interest rates of about $80,000, and then some miscellaneous other stuff. So we have about $120,000 increase in revenue versus the original budget. And then looking at the expenditures, the biggest things are, so we also, at the beginning of the year in the original budget, had planned to hold summer school, and those plans changed during the year. So I've altered the budget to account for the fact that we'll be sending kids to Deerfield schools and paying tuition as opposed to paying our own staff. So it's really just kind of shifting money around. The biggest change and the reason that we had to amend the budget are the legal settlements down in general administration of $500,000. And then I also increased the construction amount because some of the summer projects that we're doing this summer are starting in June, and I wanted to make sure we had enough money in the capital projects fund to cover those. And the approval of this budget gives me the authority to transfer money between funds. So this is kind of your approval to do that. So I wanted to ensure that I had a big authority to transfer enough money should we need it to pay for any summer project work that gets billed in June. And then a little bit further down, the $24,000 payments to other governments, that's just the tuition to Deerfield for summer school. And then the other sources and uses, again, this is just, it's a net zero because I'm transferring from one fund to the other, but this is to cover the capital projects for the summer. And the net total impact is just under that $500,000 legal settlement amount. Looking at where our fund balance will end, projecting 36% of operating expenditures, reducing fund balance by $1.3 million and ending the year at $6.2 million of fund balance.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Kahn? Comments or concerns? Any questions from any other administrators? Comments? or concerns? Not hearing any. Thank you.
Okay.
So I guess that wraps up our budget hearing. So may I have a motion to, well, can we adjourn before 7? We
You
can't.
can adjourn
You
this,
just
but
can't
then we
start the-
have to
okay.
wait until
So
7.
can I have a motion to adjourn at 6:55?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The budget hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Good evening again, and welcome to the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education regular meeting for June 11th, 2019. Julie, could you please take the roll?
I can do so. Mark Berry.
Present.
Leanne Charlo, absent. Julie Gottschall, present. Andy Duran.
Present.
Richard Hegg.
Present.
Ann Hill.
Present.
John Rose.
Great, we have a quorum, we're going to begin, and we are going to start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you guys will all join me, stand and join me. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we offer the opportunity for public comment. If anybody would like to address the board, please do so. Not seeing anybody. Another tradition is to offer the opportunity to board members to ask about or to offer up a future agenda item or a discussion item for this evening that is not on the agenda but would not be voted on. Does anybody have anything they'd like to offer for a future agenda item or discussion item? I am going to suggest that, following up on a conversation from our last meeting for a future agenda item, that it doesn't even have to be an agenda. It could be something that is shared with the board to read at home, unless you think it's better to do it on an agenda, about differentiated instruction and inclusivity, and how that is best for all kids, whether they're gifted or special ed or typical. I think an understanding of that research, because it's well researched, would be very helpful, because I get asked about separation in some of those categories, like why don't we put kids in separate classrooms depending on how they test in or test out? And the research shows that that's not the best way to do it. And so I think that would be a good thing to learn about, so that we could talk more intelligently when we get asked about it in the
I
community.
think that may fit in well, Kevin, when you and Kelly do the achievement presentations in the fall, talking a little bit about what that looks like.
You could talk about it or just share a summary of research if there is something like that out there that could be shared with us.
We'll do both.
Great. We're going to go through reports really quickly because there aren't any.
I have one.
Oh, sorry. Jean has one.
Do you have one at all?
No.
All right. All of you should have a board meeting calendar somewhere in your handouts. It should be on the top. And it says Board of Ed approved at the top on 2/26/19. So if you could all grab those. We've had to make some changes, and I want to review those with you. I think a meeting or two ago, decided that the July 23rd meeting would be at 7 a.m. That will be here. That is typically a very, very short meeting where we approve bills and any other personnel items that we need to approve. If you look at November 15th through December 7th, all of those are the interviews for the superintendent. So those have all been added on because we have to post those. December 19th, originally we had it scheduled for the 17th, but as you know, we had to move it 2 days later because we were concerned about the 10 days of posting the superintendent contract. So that is reflected on here. And finally, on May 19th, rescheduled from May 26th, I happened to find out that Nate and I, as parents, will have 8th grade promotion on May 26th. So we would like to reschedule that to May 19th for that meeting.
And that's actually 2020, is that right?
This is, oh, you're right, that's 2020 and 2019, we didn't catch that. 2020 is going to be a fantastic year. All right, anybody have any comments, questions, or suggestions? Because, like I always do, I bring things ahead to you. This will be on your approval, the consent calendar for July.
Okay.
But Shelley is going to go ahead and send you out invites for all of these so you could get them on your calendars.
Great.
Questions?
I am going to do a very brief president's report, and it's only to highlight once again, we need to draw attention to this on a regular basis because the word needs to get out. We are doing a superintendent search. Dr. Sophie is retiring effective June 31st or the end of June of next year. And we begin that process. We've already begun that process, and we will be involving the community effective, I believe it's September, when we'll begin having a survey, of the community and focus groups of community members to come offer their input so their voices may be heard in that selection process. And I just want to make sure that the community is aware that that has begun, and more information will be made public about how you can get involved, whether by survey or focus groups, as that time approaches.
Timeline is posted on our website.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to discussions and presentations. We begin with an enrollment update for 2019-2020 school year, and Dr. Rubenstein will provide that update to us.
So in front of you this evening, because it's not in your board packet, is the end of the year enrollment report, and we compare that to the 6-day enrollment figure. And so as we always do, from the start of the year to the end of the year, we always pick up a few students. So we picked up 17 students overall during the course of this. That is pretty typical for us to pick up that number of
That's
students.
typical?
Oh, yeah.
It is very typical for us to pick up that number of students. I went back and looked over time. The range has been from a low of 12 to a high of 26 over the last 5 years. And so 17 is right in there. And right now we are estimating for 1920, based on the number of students who have pre-registered for the next school year, and the number of students whose parents have told us that they are not planning on returning, a total of 886 students who are planning on re-enrolling. That number will vary over time over the summer, so the next time you will hear an enrollment update from us will be actually the 6th day enrollment figure, unless one of these class sizes changes dramatically between now and the July board meeting, when we would have to look at adding another section. At this point, we are in the clear with all of our sections, and that does not look like a possibility.
For Ann and Andy, it's only, since I've been here, it's only changed drastically once where we had to add a teacher, and that would have been at the July board meeting. So I don't contemplate that happening. We're pretty steady here.
PK3 is a lot lower this year than it was last year. Is that,
Right.
is that an
Yep.
estimate for next year, or is that?
Last year, we had a really high demand for our pre-K3, and so we actually had 2 sections of pre-K3. This year, our demand is lower, and so we have just 1 section of pre-K3. At this point last year, we had actually not added the second section of pre-K3. We actually got approval at the July board meeting. That was one of the other times that we got approval to add that section. And so we added that section last year at the July board meeting, but that is why those numbers are lower.
Aren't we charging, we're charging a lot more money?
We are charging more, we are charging more money. Those 12 that are projected were already pre-enrolled and pre-registered. We actually have a waiting list at this point. We always keep 3 spots open for kids who come to us through Lake County Early Intervention, who we are required to keep spots open for.
I would also like to request, especially for new board members, but just in general, an update related to this, just showing the enrollment trends over time, you know, like that. I know we have, I've seen it before, a chart that shows like a 10-year history or something like that, but just so we can,
Kevin usually does
Keep an
that
eye
on
on it.
6-day enrollment
Okay.
presentation. So.
Yes, we can do that.
great. Any questions for Dr. Rubenstein? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we move on to a strategic plan update provided by the entire administrative team.
Right. This is going to be very informal because most of it you've heard this year, so we're kind of just looping back around to give you our informal progress report. Kevin is going to share about board goals 1 and 2.
I believe that I am.
Again, coming from the strategic plan,
Right.
1823.
So, Board Goal 1 summary, for those of you who were not on the board at that point and not incredibly tuned in, because we really dug deep into these in the fall. And so the strategic plan indicators, board goal 1 is really focused on student achievement and student growth. And so overall, we are looking at student growth. We have lots of indicators focused on both internal measures. So what do our MAP scores look like specifically? And then external indicators. So those would be things like our state assessment scores, our benchmarks related to access, which is our English learner proficiency benchmarks, those sorts of things. And then in the fall, you will also get, after the data is published, how our district compares to other school districts. And so we also take a deep dive into the subgroup data. And so we did that really all really in the fall as a deep dive into all of this, into what all of our achievement and growth and what that really looks like over time. So those are all of the goals and the sub-goals broken down over time here and what that looks like. Our students perform incredibly well. There were actually not a whole lot of areas that we really needed to take a whole lot of closer looks at, except for the students, of course, in the subgroups where we are always looking to do better. And so the reporting history, just so that you were, for those of you who were not on the board, back in September 2018, we gave an update on Board Goal 1 and how we were using that local district assessment and what our MAP and STAR data looked like. In October of 2018, we gave an update of how our PARC scores look like and what our science scores look like. And then in November of 2018, we also gave you a whole lot of information about how our ESSA indicators really looked. And at that point, we reported that both of our schools were in the exemplary range, which is the top tier designation for both for a school district for schools across the state of Illinois, which means that across all benchmarks in all areas, both schools were performing within the top 10% of all schools in the state of Illinois. So we gave you that data of 2018. We plan to do this same reporting history again in September 2019, October 2019, and November of 2019, and continue on that same reporting schedule. So that's what we had for Goal 1. Any questions or concerns about that?
Isn't some of the testing, I think I read somewhere that the new Illinois State Board of Education director was talking about changing some of the testing.
So our students actually, and we'll talk about this much more in the fall, but our students took a newer test this year called the Illinois Assessment for Readiness. And there is lots of discussion going on at the state level about that assessment and its alignment to local assessments and its purpose and why. For instance, we would have 70% of our students measure as college and career ready on that assessment, but only, but 90% of our students perform as well on the MAP, that sort of thing. And why it's the same standards, why wouldn't they be aligned?
And assessment in general. I think she's looking to cut time, and as we know, literally every year I've been a superintendent, they've changed testing. So there's never any consistency, and I'm all for eliminating the time.
But
We need the data, but there are better ways to do it.
my question was more, my observation was more like, oh, here we go again, we're gonna change some more, so we'll have less ability to compare over time.
No. So again, and we'll dive deeper into this in the fall, but one of the contingencies, because that is a big complaint from all of our groups, but one of the big things that all of us remain steadfast in is the fact that all of the assessments have to be aligned. So when we move from PARC to the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, the same benchmarks have to be aligned and the scoring has to be the same. When we move to Illinois Assessment of Readiness to whatever is next, there has to be a bridge plan. And so that we're able to compare apples to apples. So moving forward, as we talk about Board Goal 2, so Board Goal 2 is really focused on having a well-rounded curricular program and having students who participate outside of the classroom, but also healthy students. And so students are offered the opportunity to participate in a club, activity, or sport that's of interest to them. They gain experiences that are future-focused in curricular programming in the fine arts. They know about leading healthy lifestyles, and they have learning experience in the community really focused on engaging in the world around them. So just some of the data that we gathered over the course of the school year, some of the indicators. So the percentage of students indicating that they were offered a club, activity, or sport that is of interest to them. It's a pretty high percentage that was done based on a survey earlier this year at the middle school, and we are always adding more clubs and activities. So lots of students want to get involved, and anytime another student wants to get involved, they are always taking that information to their teacher or to Mr. Blackmer or to somebody else, and we're trying to find a way to make that work. The percentage of students participating in fine arts extracurricular programming is at 62%. And then the percentage of students testing in the healthy fitness zone. So if you grew up in the 80s or 90s, then you got to take part in the presidential fitness testing. And now, thanks to Dr. Sophie and several other people, there are students all across the state of Illinois who get to test in the healthy fitness zone. And so our data gets to be submitted to the state of Illinois, and 81% of our students this year tested in the healthy fitness zone. And then that information is submitted on the state report card. And there's lots of analysis that's done with that. The only indicator that we did not gather data on is that last indicator, 2D, related to field trips and those sorts of things. And it's just because we couldn't find a way to sort of fit it in with another survey. We didn't want to just ask one specific question there. But really, overall, in terms of Goal 2, our students are engaged outside of the classroom, engaged in healthy lifestyles, and that is something that we are really proud of.
I think, Kevin, again, for benefit of Ann and Andy, every year the board votes on field trips where kids either stay overnight or go out of the state, because that's our board policy. We review them and do surveys. I'm about every other year on that. Next year would be the year that we would do surveys on field trips, so it might be a natural to ask the kids about this next year.
Yep. So that's what we've got for Board Goal 2.
That should be it.
Any questions?
I would point out that there are going to be some lines drawn and correlations made. The districts that have the highest numbers in the healthy fitness zone are highly correlated with students that have higher achievement. And while I don't think that's any surprise, I think I would mention in the state of Illinois, there are many districts that can barely afford to have their kids take PE or movement once or twice a week. And we all know through brain research that movement and wellness and PE are really important on getting the brain activated for student achievement and attention. So that's going to be a number to watch as we move forward.
Okay.
So just for clarification, I assume 100% of the kids are offered a club activity or sport, but 12% of them didn't find any of those have any interest for them.
That is, so everybody can participate in,
12%
club, yeah,
funding.
exactly. But it's like, I didn't want to participate in the robotics club because that's not interesting to me.
Or maybe they are so involved with outside activities,
Exactly.
they don't have time to.
But 100% were offered the opportunity.
Everybody, yes. So. All right. so
Okay,
Moving
goal-
on to board goal 3, that is with Mr. Khan.
Again, more of a review because you've just gone through all of this with us.
So a quick update on Board Goal 3. These are the board goals. I'll go through them in groups. So 3A and F are talking about a balanced budget and maintaining the fund balance policy. So we just this evening presented a balanced amended 18-19 operating budget, and you'll be approving a tentative balanced operating 19-20 operating budget later. Our fund balance is currently within the target range of 30 to 50% of operating expenditures. And this fall, when we present the final budget, we'll present a list to the board of actions that the district can take to make sure that our long-term projections adhere to our fund balance policy. Goals 3B and E talk about financial metrics and communication. Our current metrics are serving us well. We every month look at our variance to budget and fund balance ratio, or fund balance as a percentage of operating expenditures. And we look annually at our revenue to expense ratio and our financial profile score. In addition, we look at cost per student once a year, and this year with the new ESSA rules, we'll actually get a cost per student by school. That'll be comparable across the districts. But we're always open to any other financial metrics that people are interested in seeing. As far as communication, we will be doing another comprehensive annual financial report this year, and for next year, or for the year end, we'd also like to do a popular annual financial report. This is something that some other districts have done, and it's an award. It's something sponsored by the Government Finance Officers Association, which is just, it condenses, the comprehensive annual financial report is really, it's like 150 pages, and it's really thick and complicated, and this kind of boils it down to a really short report that has a lot more graphs and pictures and simple explanations for people to make it more accessible.
That's why it's popular.
That's why it's called the popular. It's for the popular population, so. And then C and D were to look at to create a facility plan and to look at individual areas of operation. We completed our facility review earlier this year and presented it to the board. Our architects looked at it and assessed all of our buildings and systems and laid out a plan for improving them or replacing them when they fail, so that we know how much it costs and what we need to pay attention to. And we're able to prioritize our capital spending over the long term. We also, for operations, we did a big transportation study last year and made some changes this year. They were more or less successful. The goal was to reduce from 12 to, I was hoping to get 10 routes, but I only budgeted for 11 because I wasn't sure I was going to get the 10. We started the year at 10 and had to add one back. We did reduce our routes by one. By combining, not only did we increase the number of kids per bus by 10%, so we got a little bit more efficient, but we were also reserving spots for people who were not really riding the bus, and by charging a fee, those people chose not to sign up, so we reduced not ridership, but the number of people signed up for the bus by a small amount, and we didn't really see a difference in traffic congestion, which was the goal. We generated some additional fee revenue, and the net impact to our budget was about $100,000 favorable versus prior to doing the study. We're doing our food service. We looked at that and talked extensively with Quest and Lake Forest this year, and we'll be implementing that next year. We rebid our custodial maintenance contract at about a $15,000 annual savings, and we are still looking at our technology restructuring, and we have some outsourced resources that we're currently using, and we're looking at that whole system. Yes.
Question about transportation, and you said you commented about traffic. How do we measure the impact on traffic? Is it just observational?
Yeah, number of complaints.
Anecdotal.
Anecdotal.
I haven't missed a tea time.
That's.
We haven't seen it.
We'll have to put that in our data
That's
for
the number
next
one
year.
metric.
Yes.
Golf time.
We don't have any, devices that measure traffic flow or anything, but we just anecdotally have not seen any impact.
All right, so
And that is
that's
board goal 3.
pretty much it for board goal 3. I am going to end it with updates on board goal 4 and 5, and board goal 6, we'll have the data in the fall. So board goal 4, if you can flip to the next page, Shelley. Parents are involved with their children's education through communication. We communicate in many different ways. I think parents value the most the communication between the teacher and home. That's where they get their information, that's where they get most of their questions answered. But all of us as administrators work through emails, phone calls, newsletters, parent meetings, and all of us are involved in that. So they're very involved with children's education. We also meet regularly with our PTO and alliance groups, which are again representative of our community. And Kevin works with he has regularly scheduled bilingual parent meetings. So we also have that. Parents provide feedback through the PTO, assorted surveys. We are very careful how many times we survey parents here. In a lot of districts, they're realizing they have all these great surveys and they have companies, but no one's answering their surveys because they're doing it too often. So we're very particular when we send surveys out. We rely on the 5 Essentials survey to get feedback from parents and staff and kids. We obviously talk to the PTO and the Alliance and then have various parent meetings. One of the things that we've been doing informally is to survey parents every other year, a general survey. And we also survey parents on our field trips. We've surveyed parents on our food service. We've surveyed them on bus service. We did surveys on the musical a couple years ago, and we try to vary that every year. So next year would be the general survey with the parents along with field trips. And I highly recommend we keep that at the end of the year because I think that would be great feedback for the incoming superintendent. Keep in mind also, we will have a different kind of survey when we do the superintendent search survey. So there will be a couple different options with that. I'm still on that one though, if you can click back. Members of our community are in touch with our district through On the Bluff newsletter, as well as communication with all of our administrators. Mark meets with members of our community, and I meet with members of our community. I found over the course of the last 3 years that I got to know many members of our community through the building renovations. So oftentimes, community members will just pick up the phone and call me about different things going on or ask me questions. One of the new exciting things that's going on, which we'll ask Nate and Kelly to update in the fall, is our kids are going to be working on a project with the History Museum that Christine Lechinger is kind of putting together. So that will be coming up in the fall. And then finally, staff are involved in many district and school committees to help make decisions. We are very strategic as to trying to have committees where staff feel that they would like to help make decisions. They provide feedback through both the professional development survey and 5 Essentials, and we report on that in the fall. And then there is also regular communication between the staff groups and the administration in a variety of different methods. So that's board goal 4.
Can I just offer a question, not a question, or maybe an observation? Board Goal 4 states, parents and families in our community understand what is happening within our school communities. Seems to me that measuring understanding is a very difficult thing. Have we ever given any thought to how these are like surrogate measures, where this is how much we're reaching out or getting input back. Have we ever given any thought to how do we touch on, are we effectively communicating?
Well, we've asked them. We just did that in our community survey, and that was our big eye-opener. Everybody wants to be communicated by snail mail, regular mail. I think that when we interpret that, because as you know, the board sets the goals, and then we try to figure out how to get you that information so you can provide the monitoring and governance. We interpret that as through our newsletters, through our teacher newsletters home, but then we also do the assorted surveys. So, and that helps provide parents a way to give feedback, and then also know, when we did the transportation thing last year, we prefaced it by saying we're studying our transportation, and here's a survey. We're studying our musical, and here's a survey.
Do we, in any of the surveys, do we ask something like, do you feel like we are effectively communicating?
That's on the 5 essentials, isn't it? That, there's a couple questions on the 5 essentials that measure that. So I think that when we talk about the 5 essentials in the fall, Kevin, you and I will have to remember to go back to Board Goal 4 and put that factor in here. So, good question. Board Goal 5 is on community. And Lake Bluff is an active community partner, and I don't even think I listed half of them. So I'm gonna go through the examples, and then I'm gonna end with an outstanding agenda item that you had talked about before, is articulation with Lake Forest, because I think that's something that I'm happy to share. But we have many examples. I personally meet with North Shore superintendents, and then some of our staff meets with those staff members as well. Our district is supported by a foundation called Charmed, and they have many different leaders groups, and we were talking about that today at lunch as administrators. We're all in different small groups, and they all provide us a variety of different options for growth. I meet with the Lake Bluff, Lake Forest leaders, and that's, actually, that's not my CIC. Lake Forest, Lake Bluff leaders are called the I Can't. There's a history behind that, because many times they'd be setting the meetings and somebody would say, I can't come. So I meet with Lake Bluff, Lake Forest leaders. I meet with Lake Bluff leaders. There's a Charmed group where Drew and Eric at the library and Joanna at the chamber and myself and Ron and Kathy O'Hara all meet. Lake County superintendents, I'm going to go back and give you an example on that. We meet regularly with the Park District, and when I say that, it's not just me. We include the Park District, for instance, on crisis drills. You meet with the community leaders, Mark, and some of the things that you do. We meet regularly with village representatives, chamber. Many of our professional organizations, we're all involved with our professional organizations. Kevin was on the governor transition team this year. Lake Forest, Lake Bluff collaboration is with the school districts. I'm going to come back to that one too. And we have a lot of intergovernmental agreements, which we're really proud of. We've done a lot of work in that area, and I think that small districts and small communities have to look at more things to share. We have our surveillance sharing with the police. We have our library intergovernmental agreement to share resources with all our kids. And now we're going to be sharing with Lake Forest, not only custodial, but food services for next year. So I think that when you look at this, I'm going to give a good, for instance, active community partners support each other. And this fall, when we had the death of our beloved staff member, all we had to do was reach out and say we need help, and we had, what? 42 people from throughout the county, social workers and psychs, here to support our staff. And that's really what active community partners do. Now, in your board packets or on your desk, there's a sheet of paper that says Lake Forest 67 and 115 articulation, 1819. This is just a start. I'm going to mark it draft, and actually what I have agreed on with Mike Semick over in Lake Forest is I'm going to share this with them. Shelley, you don't have this, so you don't need to worry about it. I'm going to share this document with them, And then they're going to add to it, because we put this together with just what we remember working on. So I'm going to start out with, Kevin has regular special meetings with special education administrators about programs and services. He has many ongoing meetings regarding transition to Lake Forest High School for students. We do have data shared about how students in 8th grade are achieving in the areas of math and reading. And we plan Tri-District Day, which is always in February. Nate did a lot of work with math articulation for AATH, which is our high algebra class. They met 3 times, created a common assessment, analyzed common assessment results, reviewed and proposed a new textbook adoption, and then they are doing summer work to create new scope and sequence. There's a science articulation with 67, 115, St. Mary's, and Lake Forest Country Day, where they built a team and created a vision for science articulation, and they've designed schedule and goals for next year. Kelly, again, has helped work with the Tri-District Committee to plan our event. She has met with Alan Wallert and Susan Milks to coordinate math and science articulation structures.
Are those the heads of the department?
Those are the heads of, Alan works with curriculum at the high school, and Susan this year has been working with curriculum at the elementary level. She met with the new DPM assistant principal on standards-based reporting and other leadership-type conversations. She partners with Susan to talk to pre-K parents about kindergarten readiness and kindergarten curriculum. And she worked with the Director of Innovation to understand Lake Forest 67's approaches to meeting the social emotional standards. At the elementary level, Margaret and Tracy collaborated with the Lake Forest principals regarding incoming kindergarten screening in order to align our process to theirs. So we are totally revamping, as we have shared, our kindergarten screening, and we will be doing exactly what Lake Forest does, which we believe is best for kids and better provides us accurate data and closer to the time that kids are starting kindergarten. So that's important. And they collaborated with Lake Forest to develop and implement our acceleration policy. Jay has been busy at work this year on the food service agreement, transportation collaboration, and the jointly night custodial contract. And then just some of the things I do. I have met with Dr. Holland on several occasions. One of the things we have in common is we're both female leaders here, which is somewhat unusual in our schools. But she also has our kids, and she is the #1 fan of the Superintendent for the Day program and loves it when our kids come over. And taking the kids around and showing them what other Lake Bluff kids are doing. Mike and I both attend the North Shore Superintendent meetings together, as well as the Lake Bluff, Lake Forest leaders meetings. And we communicate regularly on issues that are out in the community and impact our 3 schools, as well as my favorite communication regarding weather. So this is just a rundown of this year. I would say we are all feeling really good about the articulation and where it's going, and we will continue to add to this list over the coming years. And we're going to turn it over to Mike and let his group take a look at it and work on it as well. And that's the Board Goal 5, and Board Goal 6 is next fall.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns for Dr. Sobey? So, not hearing it, we're going to move on to the curriculum review cycle presentation by Kelly Bay.
All right. Hello. Just wanted to take an opportunity tonight to bring some awareness to an updated curriculum review cycle. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the purpose of a curriculum review cycle and why it matters, and then introduce you to a newly revised way to approach curriculum in Lake Bluff. So a little bit of rationale. It's really important that district leaders and teachers are paying close attention to not only what we're teaching, which is the curriculum, but also how we're teaching it and the method of delivery or the instruction. So as we think about curriculum review, the work really is all around aligning what we teach and how we teach it. So we have tools that support us with instruction, but there are new methods of teaching or more favored methods of teaching that align with curriculum to support student learning. I want to acknowledge that revisions are a natural part of curriculum development, and the work is ongoing and essential. So just a quick little quote that kind of resonated with me. I've got a book on school improvement and curriculum design, and they say that the role of a curriculum leader for the district is similar to that of a juggler. Instead of juggling objects, the curriculum leader juggles the demands of multiple curriculum areas and their corresponding instructional issues. Each content area needs attention to stay in the air or move forward. The central office leader needs to engage in 3 crucial roles to make this happen: the visionary, the gatekeeper, and the change agent. So I read that not to say I'm doing all of these things, but for you to acknowledge sort of all of the layers of work that go into this. And I think that I might take this quote further to say that this is the work that teachers are doing, this is the work that our building principals are doing, this is the work that specialists are doing. So there's a lot happening all at the same time. And no longer, I've mentioned this before, no longer can we wait every 5 years to take a look at our English language arts programming or our math programming or our fine arts programming. So in your packets, you'll notice this is kind of a former cycle. Each school year, we're noting what it is that we're doing with curricular areas. I think this second slide is more telling. There's definite sort of gaps in what we're looking at and how we're looking at different areas throughout our elementary and middle schools. So I'm here to share a new cycle model. I will own the fact that I did not come up with this all on my own. As Jean mentioned, I network and talk with a lot of district leaders, and so kind of begged, borrowed, pulled, and then made it fitting to Lake Bluff. So I want our principals and our teachers to start to think about curriculum design and improvement in phases, and acknowledge that a phase isn't just like 1 year or one moment in time. So there's research that is happening, there's designing services, there's identifying resources and piloting. We're then thinking about professional development and training. We'll move into an implementation phase, and then we are evaluating and revising and deciding where to go next. So my next step would be to color code this so it matches the previous model, but we've got an idea for starting kind of where we are this year and how can we look ahead in 5 years and notice and think about what phase of the work each of our important content areas, what they're doing in each of the areas. So this allows us to sort of effectively juggle all of those areas in a way that makes sense to teachers and leaders.
I noticed there's no phase 2, 3, or 5 on there.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you mentioned that. As I was kind of going through this before presenting tonight, I think there's a couple of revisions that I would actually make. With that being said, some of the social emotional learning work that we're doing, I think, is closer to some of that phase 1 and phase 2 as we're bringing that kind of forward and acknowledging and assessing what we're doing there, kind of auditing. I would also acknowledge that social studies with a new program in teachers' hands would be closer to some of that phase 2 and phase 3 work.
It kind of sounds like 6 months from now, if you were to present this to us again, there might be some.
There might be some shifting. I should put draft in really big.
Well, sounds like it's a living document,
Yes,
right?
yeah. In fact, on Monday, our specials fine arts classes, or teachers from the elementary school took a look at this to notice and note kind of where are they and what support do they need to get either to the next phase or to the next step of their work. So just next step, continuing to work with teachers, emphasizing professional development, and then partnering with other districts. We know that as a small district, it's important that we lean on those around us in terms of training and resources where needed and where applicable. there's any other questions.
Any questions for Kelly?
I think I just want to share, right when I was hired, which would have been in February of 2012, Joanne Trahanis was here, and she did the first curriculum cycle, the old-fashioned one here,
Yeah, but we hadn't had one
the one that
before
we didn't have.
Before that, we had zero.
And she got everything going, and we've been working on it consistently, and it is amazing to me how much it's evolved into that living document. And Kelly just continued her work, and when I looked at this, what I love about it is that teachers have a much bigger part in the evaluation. What do they need? And they're constantly reevaluating and taking a look at it. And as we know, curriculum is different. In my day, it usually revolved around a book. And so it had to be set up in the old charts because districts could not afford to buy all those textbooks at one time. Now it's just very different. So I applaud all the work that you've done, and I really like the new charts.
Thank you.
I think it'll be interesting to watch that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to action items.
Yep.
Action item 8A is the approval of the 2018-2019 amended budget, which we did in our earlier meeting.
Hearing.
Our earlier hearing, yeah, that was the word I was looking for. Does anybody have any further questions or comments for Mr. Khan or in general? So not hearing any, may I have a motion to approve the 2018-2019 amended budget as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Richard Haig.
Yes.
Andy Duran.
Yes.
Ann Hill.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes. Motion's approved. Item 8B is the approval of the 2019-2020 tentative budget. Are we going to go through that presentation now or just ask for questions?
I can just ask for questions.
Because we went through it at the committee of the whole, right?
Right. And at your place, I just had a couple of the highlighted slides just so that you could remember or recall what we talked about, and then if there are any questions. I did want to point out that many districts don't do a formal approval of a tentative budget. We feel that it's important to bring it to you before the start of the fiscal year so that you can see our spending plan and we give us authorization to spend towards that plan until we pass the final budget in September.
It's still early on because things will tighten up a lot over the summer. You'll see the budget again in August, and you'll see the budget again in September a couple more times. But we like the formal approval because we know it's best practice. Many districts don't do that.
I think it's good to give people time to think about it, too.
I do too.
I also want to draw attention to the fact that this is the 1920 tentative budget, and what we just did was the amended 1819. So just to make the distinction.
Right.
So before I call for a motion, does anybody have questions or
Yeah,
comments?
just one question or one comment, I guess. What I found useful when I first came on the board was a historical perspective of revenues and expenditures over a period, an extended period, last 10 years or so. Can we put something like that together for one of our next meetings so we get a view of what's going on here with respect to total revenue, total expenditures, cost per student historically over the last 10 years?
Yeah, the operating budget.
Maybe you could do
Yeah.
that at the August budget presentation, because you'll do a full budget presentation again
Are you
then.
looking for a table? Most of the presentations have a
I can
chart
send
that
you
goes
what I
back.
have, what I found useful. I have it at home. I'll send you a copy of it and you can take a look. It's just top line stuff.
You did it.
Yeah.
You did the presentation, so
Yeah.
it was very helpful, Jay.
You may not remember it.
Remind me what I did.
I'll send it to you.
Okay. Anybody else? Rich, I see you scanning stuff. You got a question?
No questions.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the 2019-2020 tentative budget as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Richard Haig.
Yes.
Andy Duran.
Yes.
Ann Hill.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item 8C, approval of the amended flex spending plan. Mr. Khan is going to talk about amendments to this is an insurance cafeteria plan, not insurance, benefits plan, cafeteria plan that will take effect September 1st.
Yes, we are changing third-party administrators of the plan next year, and we're amending the plan to account for the fact that the board is going to be contributing to the flexible spending accounts. We're excited about the change, and in order to officially amend the plan and maintain the tax deductibility of the benefit, we need the board to formally approve our new plan. So there's some small changes, but
Any cost implications for the district?
No, we actually will be saving money with our new provider, much higher level of service, so we're looking forward to the change.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Khan? So may I have a motion to approve the amended flex spending plan as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Julie Godchill, yes. Richard Haig?
Yes.
Andy Duran?
Yes.
Ann Hill?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
John Rosen?
Yes.
Motion is passed. Approval of the E-rate consultant contract. Again, Mr. Khan, if you will, please bring us up to date on the E-rate consultant contract and what that really means.
Sure, the E-rate program is a federal grant program that provides money to schools and libraries for connectivity to the internet, essentially. And because the program is complicated and ever-changing, we hire a consultant to help us with the applications for that program. It's at a reasonable cost, and we've had this consultant for the last 5 years. We get significant amount of revenue from it. And he is parting ways with his current company, and we wanted to stay with him, so we need to sign a new contract with the consultant. And this is the same language that we had with the previous company, so our attorney has already reviewed the language.
And I think I read that we're eligible for like 40%.
We get 40% back.
So it's a lot.
So it's of all of our internet, and actually, when we do, you'll see in the single path agreement, we're going to be combining it with our firewall and wide area network services, and we'll be eligible for a discount on those services as well with the new contract.
So ballpark, what's the total, that 40% piece, how much is that? Just ballpark.
40,000 a year,
And
30,000 a year.
And the consultant takes 5%, I think.
Takes
I saw.
5%.
Yeah. As opposed to us hiring somebody to do
It's
it.
5% of the 40, $2,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions on that E-rate contract? Not hearing any. May I have a motion to approve the E-rate consultant contract with Communications Audit Services as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Richard Haig?
Yes.
Andy Duran?
Yes.
Ann Hill?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
John Rosen?
Yes.
Julie Godchill, yes.
Motion's approved. Item 8E is the approval of the technology purchase plan. Again, Jay and Mr. Rubenstein, Dr. Rubenstein will bring to the board the technology purchases for the following year that align to what the technology committee works on throughout the year. John also sits on that committee. Jay and Kevin will share the laptop purchases that we purchased or leased this summer in preparation for next year.
So
They're all spelled out, pretty much.
it's all spelled out there. We're actually spending less this year than we have in prior years. We are planning on purchasing updated Chromebook computers for 2 different grade levels for the next school year.
Are we getting away from the Mac stuff over time?
Yes.
And so eventually everybody's going to have Chromebooks?
This is the last year of our Mac lease.
And
It's actually the last year with our Mac lease, excuse me. So this year, our 7th and 8th grade students will have this is our last year of our Mac lease, yeah. So this year, the only students who will have Mac laptops will be our 8th grade students, and it'll be the last year of the lease.
And I apologize for not asking these questions in advance, just occurred to me. How many years did we get out of a MacBook, the hardware itself? How many years did we get out of a Mac versus how many years do we expect to get out of a Chromebook?
So we lease the Macs at a cost of around $30,000 per year, at which point for 3 years. So that cost us, around $90,000. And then at which point we have to give them back. And then the Chromebooks, you can see the costs right up there, at which point we can sell them for parts if we wanted to, and they are holding up at this point fairly well after, as Chromebooks have gone on over time, they're becoming far more sturdy and able to, be sold over time.
Do we expect to get 3 years out of them?
Absolutely 3 years.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, so may I have a motion to approve the technology purchase plan as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Andy Duran,
Yes.
Ann Hill,
Yes.
Mark Barry,
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Julie Godchill, yes. Richard Hack.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item 8F, the approval of the single-path managed IT services contract renewal. Mr. Khan will discuss the 3-year contract renewal with a single path for managed technology services.
We're a small district, and we rely on this third-party consultant to help us round out our technology department.
Expertise.
Expertise. Essentially, they provide some of the services that a full-time tech director would be. Kevin is our kind of part-time tech director among all the other things he does. We like using them because they have visibility into many other districts. This is their core competency, and they provide very good service and advice. And we had a 3-year agreement starting in 2013, and then we renewed it in 2016 for 3 years, and this would be the third 3-year renewal with them, and they've not raised the price since, so this will be at a constant cost. So we feel like we're getting a very good value.
They also sit on the committee.
This is on the tech committee, so John has interacted with them.
Yeah.
They will definitely be of great help to us as we work through the transition of Lori
As our
retiring.
current technology lead is retiring, we are doing a lot of work in trying to figure out how best to run the department in the future. And they're instrumental in that.
Do those, I think I saw it allows for 10 hours a month of consulting time, is that what it is? And is that enough?
That is just additional hours. That's high-level stuff. So they do the high-level consulting where they come and meet with us and do long-term planning and things like that, but they also provide what they call, like, they monitor our network. So if our internet ever goes down and we can't fix it, they fix it. Like, so we have hours in that respect where we can call them and have them troubleshoot and fix problems. So there's many other services they provide, and the 10 hours is more of that kind of project work.
Okay.
Do they work on the security aspect of our system?
If we ask them to, certainly they do for, when you say like tech security, like
Yeah, I mean, you
firewalls.
hear so much today about ransomware and attacks on schools and hospitals and so on. And
Yeah, they
every
do
time
that
that
as
comes
well.
up, I think
Yeah,
about
they
our
do. They
system.
work with these guys often on making
Yeah,
recommendations
they've
for that
recommended
too.
several software packages that we've gone out and purchased.
And do we back our stuff up off-site?
We do.
So how much is this a month, this service?
I think it's 5,300. Is that?
5,100.
5,100, 5,135 a month.
And you think that's a competitive rate for what you've
Yes.
seen for the service?
I've actually been cold called by several other firms looking for the business, and they're certainly in the ballpark. And many of the other firms don't have the kind of school experience that this firm does.
And I see there's 2 additional single-path contracts we're going to talk about next. Does it make sense to explain how it all works together? Does it all work together?
Sure.
Good point.
Actually, so we used to have, the next single path contract is the Internet and WAN Wide Area Network Services contract. So this used to be one contract. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier. We spent the 5,100 for the managed IT services, and then we contracted separately for basically the firewall and wide area network services, and then our internet was separate with Comcast. And so by changing the structure and having single path basically they're buying internet services from AT&T and providing that to us through AT&T, and then putting the wide area network and firewall services on top of that, it makes it eligible for that E-rate federal grant subsidy. So by combining them, we're saving a considerable amount of money because we're getting a federal reimbursement for 40% of that, whereas before we were not. They went out and competitively bid the internet services for us, so whereas we were getting 300 megabytes per second service, we've upgraded that to 500 at a lower cost. So they will go out and do those types of things for us. So this project, or this additional contract is a 3-year. So our 3-year Comcast internet service contract is expiring, and we're replacing it with a 3-year AT&T contract, but we're getting it through single path, and that makes it eligible
At a discount.
for the discount.
Got it.
And then you might as well talk about the other one
And then
too.
the third contract is they provide us staff. So We had our sort of help desk staff or people on staff, and they worked with us. And as they've retired, we've replaced them with single path staff. And the nice part about that is that it's a little bit more flexible. It's a fully loaded cost, so they provide, single path provides the benefits and salary, and they provide the continuity and the training of the staff. And then if for some reason this person can't answer the question, they have access to all of single path to escalate it and get help. So it's a level of expertise that would be difficult to hire and keep on staff at the cost that we're paying. So what we've been doing this for, I think, over 2 years at the elementary school, and then first for the last half year, Vicki retired in the middle of the year suddenly, and we needed to replace her quickly, and so Single Path was able to step up and provide that person for us, and we'd like to continue that agreement. And then as Lori Brown, who's sort of our technology guru in-house, she's scheduled to retire next June, and we're going to be looking at the total department and trying to figure out how we want to staff it. But I'm expecting that staff from Single Path will be a big part of that new structure.
So how many, are these full-time, partial
These are
time
full-time
positions?
people.
Okay.
They're each full-time people, and they're one-year contracts that renew automatically. We can
Get out at any
get out of
time.
them with 30 days' notice, but they would renew annually at CPI. So this year, we're basically renewing the contract for the current 2 people who we've had, who we like. And the other nice thing is that when we bring in a single path person, we try them out. If we don't like them, we tell single path, and they go out and they would give us something else. And so we've been through a couple of people at the elementary school, and we found someone who's very good and likes to stay, really gets along well with the staff and fits in well. And then we just brought in a new person at the middle school, and they've been very successful. Also, the staff really likes him, and he's he's been performing very well. So we've been happy with this person, and we'd like to renew the contract for both of those people.
So it's 120 grand a year for these 2
A
people.
year for 2 people, salaries
And 40% of
benefits.
that ultimately is reimbursed through E-rate.
This does not qualify.
This is not-
This is personnel. The only thing that qualifies is communication services for you.
Okay. There's roughly 100, I looked at it quickly, roughly 120 of that. Those two prior contracts are roughly 160 each, something in that category.
Yes,
So 40% of that 120 comes back to us, right?
correct.
So, and this is just a part of our expenditures.
Right, so this contract would be, if we didn't have these people, we would have to hire staff.
Right, I
and
understand
they'd be
that.
part of our FTE, and we'd pay salary
We'd be
and benefits.
responsible for all their professional development and all the
Yeah,
other
yeah,
different
And then
things.
once
that
you
go
have
with
somebody, you're sort of, they're your employee, and
Well, the technical expertise is today, it's so complicated to have someone on staff doing this would cost you far
it.
more than
And it's
120 grand.
nice if they don't know the answer, they've got all the support of the
Yeah,
whole
no.
company. It's really, for a small district,
right, if we were a large district
Way
with
to
lots
go.
of employees, and we could go out and hire the best tech people, it would make sense, but
bless you.
given our situation, we're very fortunate, I think, to have a good partnership with a company like Single Path.
So that would be F, G, and H.
And the services provided under H they couldn't handle the services we're getting through contract F. Totally different thing. In
Those-
other words, we're looking at this single path support staff. They are not capable of doing don't have time, whatever the case may be, to do the IT services that we pay for under the first contract?
Right, this is separate, these
Yeah,
are
they're different.
lower level, they call them what, level 1, level 2, like, the services that we pay for in the first contract are the upper people in the company, and they have, extensive backgrounds in this, and they're more of a
Big
chief-
picture.
chief technology officer type person, where these would be your support staff people who do your kind of everyday tech support. Although I would say the person at the middle school, they hired somebody who's higher qualified with the potential of moving into a higher level position at our district. If
Like maybe ours that will be vacant.
the woman who's retiring, this person has shown that they have the skills to possibly step into that role.
So you wouldn't replace Laurie's position?
We're
we don't
still
know.
talking through that.
Okay.
We would need to replace it in some form or fashion, but
Right. but
How we
maybe
do
not-
that.
Not at
Do
that
that is
same
not.
level, perhaps. So that would be a
Or we may
savings.
split it up. She does, there's a really, an instructional technology side, which is very much dealing with what the technology the teachers use in the classroom and the software that they use. And then there's a whole infrastructure side, which is just wireless internet access, some of the more central programs, and more the, the high tech, or the hard infrastructure, servers and things like that. And those are really two different skill sets, so we might split those out and
We're still talking through all that, so.
Any other questions on this? Comments or concerns? Okay, F. May I have a motion to approve the single path managed IT services contract renewal?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ann Hill.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Richard Haag.
Yes.
Andy Duran.
Yes.
Motion approved. Item G, may I have a motion to approve, I'm assuming there's no other comment on individual ones. Would anybody like to comment on the single path internet and wide area network services contract?
No.
May I have a motion to approve the single path internet and wide area network services contract?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mark Berry.
No, yeah, yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Richard Haag.
Yes.
Andy Duran.
Yes.
Ann Hill.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item H is the approval of the single path staff support contract renewals. Any comments or concerns on that? May I have a motion to approve the single path staff support contract renewals?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Richard Haag.
Yes.
Andy Duran.
Yes.
Ann Hill.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Okay, moving on. Item I, approval of the Lake Bluff Elementary School projector proposal. The district received 3 responses to an RFP for the projector at the elementary school. The board is asked to accept the proposal from CPS based on pricing. Any comments? Mr. Khan, would you like to add to
No,
that?
this was part of the capital project plan that we had presented in the spring, and.
In our budget?
Is it in the budget? We were moving forward with it, and we went out and looked at 3 different proposals, and we liked the CPS proposal.
Any questions or comments from the board?
How often do we use the projector?
I think they use it quite frequently during.
In the
daily
day,
gym
during the
class.
day,
Do they?
like
So they
every
use it-
day.
Yeah.
They-
I know the teachers do, and then we use it even for any kind of presentations or things in the gym, but I know the teachers use it quite frequently.
They said that once it's replaced, their plan would be to use it in instruction every day, so.
And what's the warranty on this thing?
I think it's 1 year.
1 year?
parts and labor.
That's all?
I mean, in the contract, the installer will warrant the installation for a year. I don't know what the projector warranty is. It may be, the projector itself may have a longer warranty, but I can certainly look into that.
Okay.
Any other questions? May I have a motion to approve the Lake Bluff Elementary School projector proposal with CPS as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ann Hill.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Richard Haag.
Yes.
Andy Duran.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item J, the approval of equipment purchase and addendum to the RJB contract. Mr. Khan will discuss the need to purchase custodial equipment for the night custodial contract with RJB, as well as an addendum to their custodial contract.
Yeah, so this is the only thing tonight that you have not seen previously. When we bid the night custodial contract, it was bid without equipment. And our previous contract with GCA has GCA providing the equipment. So as we transition between companies, they're going to pull their old equipment out, and we need to buy some new equipment to put it in place. So we've looked at purchasing versus getting it through the company. And at the time of the memo, we decided that we would buy the 2 big machines. And those are fairly expensive. They cost about $14,000 each. And then the contract is to have RJB provide a lot of the other equipment. So we would like to approve that contract tonight so that if we do need to go to have RJB provide the equipment, that we can do so. Steve's currently pricing out some of that other equipment, and we may end up purchasing it.
And it might be cheaper
And
that
and
way.
it's definitely cheaper. The equipment lasts 10 years, and, I think the payback period is probably 2 or 3 years on the equipment. So over the long term, it's definitely smarter to purchase equipment in-house and just pay for the cleaning service rather than have them renting us the equipment as well.
So these are these big giant scrubber things that you.
Yeah, those are the two green ones that they ride, and we use it a lot more at the middle school now with the new flooring surface than we did in the past, so it's important to have them.
And we may not use this, it's just Jay needs approval because we can't wait till the July board meeting
And
for
then also
approval on
because
it.
the amount of the purchases is above our threshold, so we need approval to go out and purchase the machines for $28,000.
But our prior cleaning service provided the machines that we're now going
As
to buy?
part of the contract.
Okay, so I have to ask, when we say that the night custodial rebid was $15,000 in savings, was that net of this, or?
No, that was in addition to the change from the equipment.
Okay, so we're still even though we're going to have to buy equipment now, we still save 15,000?
And that's an estimate, so we had 6 people under our old contract, and we were paying for the 7th person on the side, and we have 7 people in our current contract, but they had a hard time filling the 7th person, so I had budgeted about $300,000 for cleaning services with the 7 people on our current contract, and the new contract is $275,000. So it's about $25,000 a year difference, if they would have been able to provide all 7 people for the entire contract this year.
But what about the equipment, though?
Well, and so the equipment is a portion of that 25. So the contract is $25,000 less a year.
But now we have to go out and buy a piece of equipment that's $14,000.
But that will last for 10 years.
But it will last for 10 years.
Okay.
The
So-
payback in that is what, you say, 3 years?
3 years. So I'm saying that $10,000 a year was spent on the equipment
Okay,
in the contract.
got it. Is there any way to share that equipment with Lake Forest or another facility?
Not really. It's used, I mean, it's
It's used every
It's used
day.
the big pieces are used every day. Some of the other pieces are used less frequently, which is why I was considering not purchasing them. But, you know, it's hard enough to move stuff between our 2 schools.
Be a
We're buying one for each school, you know, to have to share with another district.
Not work, yeah, okay.
So you're asking for approval to look at to make the purchase if you find the right
So
price?
I'm asking we don't really need approval for the other equipment because it's small in dollars.
It's
I need
gonna be
approval
less.
for the $28,000 for the 2 big machines, and then approval for the contract with RJB, which we may not end up executing, but we would like to get it approved and signed in case we
Okay.
do choose to.
So it gives you options.
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly.
Any questions or concerns? All right, so may I have a motion to approve the equipment purchase and addendum to the RJB contract as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Richard Haig?
Yes.
Andy Duran?
Yes.
Ann Hill?
Yes.
Mark Barry?
Yes.
John Rosen?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item K is the personnel report. Did you guys give me an updated personnel report, or is this the
Yeah,
most
this
current
is it.
one?
It hasn't changed.
Let me see yours, just to make sure I've written the right one. So this month, the personnel report includes 1 non-licensed new hire, Kelly Doro, is going to be the school nurse at the elementary school, replacing Marlene Balling for the 1920 school year for a salary of $50,760. It includes 1 licensed resignation, Danielle Cray, who's a pre-K teacher, leaving for other full-time employment at the elementary school, and that's effective June 10th of this year. And 1 licensed FMLA leave request of Mallory Jorgensen, who is currently the library and media specialist at the middle school. And she's requesting FMLA medical leave effective December 3rd of 2019 for about 12 weeks. Any questions or comments on that? May I have a motion to approve the June 11th, 2019 personnel report as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mark Barry?
Yes.
John Rosen?
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Andy Duran?
Yes.
Motion's approved.
Wait,
There's
Ann Hill?
Yes.
Did I miss anyone? 'Cause-
No. I vote
Okay,
no.
Richard Haig?
I vote no.
Okay, the
You
motion's
vote
approved.
no? You don't vote no. Do
Before you
really?
go into bills, Julie had a question, so I would like Margaret to answer it so you can go into the approval of the bills. So you probably have to put the motion on the table first, and then we'll call Margaret.
Or we can just
We'll
Talk
ask
about
you
it
to talk
first.
about it.
Why not just talk about it?
Yeah, it's fine.
So why don't you ask your question?
Oh, so in the bills, I saw expenditures for summer backpacks, and I wondered what summer backpacks are.
Yes, thank you for asking. Our reading specialists, along with our math enrichment specialist, got title money, wrote a grant for help providing backpacks to our free and reduced students. In the backpacks, they have leveled books, so books were selected specifically for each student at their reading level with their interests in mind. It also has flashcards with sight words, math flashcards, some simple games for them to play at home with families, and then the K through 3, they were kind of regular style backpacks. 4th and 5th were kind of those string backpack style, a little cooler for the older students. And then we had the classroom teachers write a personal note in each backpack and give them to the students to kind of provide that connection. We also included information about resources in the community for the families, both in English and Spanish.
Okay. And you said that was covered by a grant?
Title money,
Title.
yeah.
What does that mean?
Title I.
Title I
grant.
funds.
Okay.
Perfect.
That's good.
Thanks,
Any other
Margaret.
questions? Thanks.
All right, so we're going to move on to the consent agenda. This month, the consent agenda includes the P-card report, the bills report, the impress report, no impress report, the treasurer's report, the open session meeting minutes for May 28th, 2019 special meeting, and the May 28th, 2019 regular Board of Ed meeting. Would anybody like any of that pulled for further discussion to be voted on separately? Not hearing any, so may I have a motion to approve the June 11th, 2019 consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Richard Haig?
Yes.
Andy Duran?
Yes.
Ann Hill?
Yes.
Mark Barry?
Yes.
John Rose?
Yes.
Motion's approved. Approvals, there were no, item 9, FOIA requests, there were none. Public comments, anybody like to address the board, please do so. Not seeing any. Any other comments from the board?
One comment. Jay, you've done a great job on all of moving this stuff through financially. Thank you.
And everybody have a great summer.
Don't forget about the July meeting, though. All right, what date is
Oh,
that
hey, you know,
again,
one
Shelley?
last thing, thank you
23rd.
to all our, thank you to,
July 23rd? At 7 a.m. here. Let me know if you will not be here.
one last thing, just, to all our teachers going on summer break, thank you for all you do for our kids. You work really hard, and we really appreciate it. And we'll see you next year.
No, if there's-
So may I have a motion to adjourn at 8:17?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.